Taxes was waiting around for your taxes to be done, which led to worrying about not getting any money back. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes in a day to get you up to $4,000 fast with a refund advance loan. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Expert filing only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Refund advance has $0 loan fees and 0% APR. Refund advance loans may be issued by First Century Bank, N.A. or Web Bank. Terms apply, subject to approval.
We will not be held responsible for any hearing impairments or damage caused to you from excessive exposure to this sound.
No. Read the words. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Sure, you need an organized military force to defend your country, but the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the people, in contrast with the militia. It doesn't say the right of the militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says the right of the people. Now, why the word people? Because the people who wrote this had just fought a war for 2 years against a tyrannical state militia. They knew the time might come when they'd have to do that again. So they made the possession of weapons a right that the militia could never take away. Now, gun control advocates say the phrasing is clumsy, and the comma separating the state from the people is just a pause to get your breath. Strange they can't seem to point out any other places where those hack framers fucked up the wording.
Those hack framers. Well, that was Penn and Teller explaining the Second Amendment for dummies, I think is the best way to put that. Welcome to the Friday Night Fiasco. It is the 11th of January, 2013. I am the lesser of the two hosts, Shaun. Across from me, as always, is the better of the two hosts, Clint.
And I am glad you played that opening part because do you know how much hate mail I got last week?
Oh, now there's a specific pile of hate mail you're getting? Normally it's just a generalization.
Normally it's just general. I actually got hate mail, and I know that we had some listeners bug out last week also at the beginning of the show when I made the remark that, hey, according to a liberal interpretation of the Second Amendment of the Constitution, women can't own guns, or it doesn't apply to them unless they're a member of the National Guard. And I think people took that to mean that I was saying that the Second Amendment doesn't necessarily apply to women, which was not the case. Either I failed to make my case clear, but I think at the beginning I was pretty clear that let's use the liberal argument.
I think the biggest problem, and we should have picked up on this right away, is as soon as you said it, I heard this. That's a sound that immediately says maybe we should stop and clarify.
No, this is our show. We're pressing forward. Okay, we have the objective. We're advancing to it, period. Right. So what I was talking about was the liberal argument, and like Penn and Teller just pointed out in this piece they did, is that the liberal argument is that guns apply to the militia. So what I did to point out how ridiculous that argument is I clearly defined the militia. Not what it was, but what the original intent was, which I believe I mentioned from one of the co-authors. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That it was the people as the whole, and the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But I made the argument that, hey, the left is arguing militia. So let's define militia and take this to the logical conclusion. So for those of you that sent me hate mail, you're kind of ignorant. I mean, I love you. Thank you for listening to the show, but you're kind of ignorant.
Well, if that doesn't win listeners, what does? Well, it is a ridiculous argument, and as we discussed earlier, that's just one way that they want to approach it. And I think they said it great. When I saw that clip, I immediately was psyched to see it because I thought it was very well done. They're trying to say the comma is this pause, as it's part of the same, and not comma, new subject.
Not a separation.
Right. is it really that pathetic that you have to go that far to say this one comma is the difference between being able to defend yourself from tyranny and not?
They don't believe that you have to defend yourself from tyranny, though. That's not what they believe it's for. And here's the funny thing about that is, again, taking the liberal side of the argument. If you're talking about that it only applies to militia, which the U.S. Code defines, but let's say, hey, it applies to everybody, militia, whatever, then that is the people as a whole, and they can be called into service for defense of their country as the militia, which is anybody, and they're supposed to keep their own arms.
Right.
So they should be able to have military-style weapons because they can be called into service of their country.
Right. And, we talked about this, too. If we're all part of the militia, then we are.
Right.
And if we're not, then we're not. But how are they going to spin it? So if they say, okay, in order to keep and bear arms, you have to be part of the quote-unquote militia.
Okay, we are.
Okay, so congratulations. We're all part of the militia.
Except for women.
Except for women, as we discussed.
Unless they're in the National Guard.
It left them out.
Yep.
So there's your war on women.
Way to go, liberals. Way to have a war on women again.
But let's look at that. They just took a large chunk of the population,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of, you read, if you're on Twitter or you read any of the headlines,
mm-hmm.
a lot of people are starting to post when people are defending themselves with weapons when it turns out right,
mm-hmm.
as it should be.
Right.
A lot of them are women defending their home, defending their kids,
yep.
Taking on an assaulter on the streets or whatever.
Yeah, then they just have to use their husband's gun and go back to baking bread. What's the problem?
But we get thrown into the war on women. Oh, it's the right to war on women.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I said that to be facetious before I get any more hate mail.
But isn't that just insane? And so if they jump this militia thing, there's a large chunk of the population that doesn't even qualify.
Exactly, and maybe that's the point.
Right.
But here's another thing. If that's where they're going with it, and they're using the militia as defined by the United States Code and not the original intent of the Second Amendment,
right,
then that means that all laws in all states that outlaw firearms or ammunition possession for people under the age of 18, right, because 17 years old,
right,
or 21 like some states, those are unconstitutional because the militia is 17 to, right,
64,
17 to
right?
45, 64 with prior military service.
Right.
So, okay, so we already have a bunch of anti-gun laws that are unconstitutional now. And now you're putting guns in the hands of 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
Who can still go to high school.
So congratulations.
You're making it legal for them.
The exact logic you're trying to use to stop it.
This is great. This is so awesome. I love it when they make
it easy on us?
Yeah. And why hasn't anybody else bothered to look into this at all?
Well, because they're not really, with the exception of a few people that Piers Morgan, and we'll get into that, brings on his show to try to berate, which that bit him in the ass this week, even though that's normally what he does. I saw a certificate out there this week. Okay. And I was very glad to see it. We issued it, but it was congratulating Piers Morgan. And I'll tell you why. He obviously graduated from the Chris Matthews School of Interviewing. Okay. Which is very, very specific. Yeah. And it entails a lot of things. Number one, have your mic louder than the person you're arguing with, so you can always talk over it.
And number two, don't address any direct questions that you don't have a good answer to.
Just push it away.
Just push it aside.
Number three, turn him into a straw man. Right.
And number four, just yell and talk over your opponent.
So it's obviously 1 year apiece. It's a 4-year school. Right. So he did get his, it's not a certificate. I apologize. It's a diploma. I believe it's a bachelor of bullshit.
Issued by us.
Issued by the Sackheads radio show.
It's like an honorary.
No, it's legit.
No, it's honorary because Chris Matthews doesn't instruct anything because he's kind of an idiot.
No, but we've learned from his ways, and that's how Piers learned. So I'm very proud of him. He graduated.
Are we going to declare ideological war on him also?
It may need to happen. But
what does he know about his government?
Well, let's start from the beginning. Let's erase the government. Let's just go after him, the person. Okay. He was the editor of a newspaper in Britain.
Huge newspaper, right?
Big newspaper.
Huge.
And huge. And it's found out that he did all this seedy, underhanded bullshit stuff.
No.
I guess there was illegal wiretaps or whatever.
No. Now, wait,
so that doesn't work out.
It's in Britain, so they can do that there, right?
Right.
Okay.
So he bounces around a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Then he ends up on America's Got Talent.
Well, he obviously doesn't have talent.
Well, it says America, not Britain's.
Okay, then why is he judging it?
Well, because it's easy. When you can't do something, you can judge it. It's like you can also teach it.
Got it. Okay.
So, and then all of a sudden, what's his name there? The guy who was 9,000 years old and had 45 wives, retired. I can't.
Larry
King. Clint. Oh, King. That's right. Larry King retired. And they said, oh, we got to get somebody, but we want to get somebody who is.
By the way, that looked really weird.
I know, Sarko. I'd love
now.
being in the middle of a bit or a discussion and have the sound engineer pretty much climb into my lap.
Which was pretty awesome.
On my computer. So
I'm going to be posting a picture of it online.
Sarko, thank you. So he comes in, and I'm pretty sure CNN said, hey, you know what? We need a puppet, but people love accents. What's our option? Well,
Pinocchio.
Right? That didn't work out.
Okay.
There was a French accent, even though they were in France. There was zero accent in that movie. And that's always a weird thing about Disney to me, but whatever. So they bring in this Piers Morgan guy. And
different from Pierce Brosnan?
Totally.
Or what's his name?
One was
James
Brosnan,
Bond guy, right? Yeah.
And
not the good one.
They bring in this. No, Pierce was okay. You're thinking of Roger Dalton.
Who?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
So they bring in this Piers Morgan guy, and all he does, and we all know CNN's in the left pocket for the most part. I every now and again they'll have a commentator or somebody because they have to say they're credible. They have somebody with the other side, and they blow them up. So they bring this Piers Morgan guy in who jumps when he's told to jump. He has, I don't think, I've seen him speak before. I don't think he's that intelligent of an individual. He may have his stance on the Second Amendment. He has it as a British citizen who knows very little about what it's like to be a real American because he was rich when he came over here. So he doesn't.
I have to say something.
Okay.
Hey, Pierce, remember Yorktown. Tweet that to him from me.
I absolutely will.
Remember Yorktown,
Remember
Pierce.
Yorktown, do it at the break. So, and he comes over here and he just, because Larry King, as crazy as he was, he had his own opinions.
Right.
And he sometimes went against the grain of CNN. He would say but he's Larry King. What are they going to do to him? This guy, he falls right in the line, and whether his ideals line up with CNN's or they don't, he's out there spouting it every night. And the simple fact that he would say such things like he did with Ben Shapiro from Breitbart, and none of his higher-ups went, hey, you know what? Watch it. Because your opinion's your opinion, but where the hell do you get off? Like he called the Constitution your little book because Ben Shapiro brought him. I've read your little book.
I don't think he's read it. And if he has read it, he doesn't understand it, which how can he? Remember Yorktown. I think, you know what I have to wonder? I wonder if he needs help.
Is he crying out for help?
Is he being held hostage because he is a British citizen, correct?
Right.
Here on a work visa. Is he being held hostage almost like a human trafficking thing where CNN won't let him do anything and they're holding his visa if he doesn't toe the line and say exactly what they say?
Well,
maybe he's crying for help. Maybe they say, hey, we have you surrounded here in the building like Washington surrounded Cornwallis.
Whoa. And
you can't leave, and you have to buy things from our little store, and you're forever indebted to us. I wonder if he needs help.
Is he like the guy that was stuck in the airport terminal for 10 years on the CNN? You know, he just can't leave the building. He's like, oh, I'm screwed, so, well, you guys get an opening? Oh, what the hell? I've been on TV before. What do you want me to say? Anything you want, that's easy.
So let me get this straight. You're going to buy me like one or two suits, and the rest of the time I'm going to wear what I came over in.
Oh, God.
And you won't
it's frustrating.
Revoke my visa.
So we're going to get into, because there's an interview that we're going to talk about the second half of the show with Ben Shapiro from Breitbart.
Let's just play it now.
You want to do it now?
Remember Yorktown. Yes.
All right. So this was from yesterday.
That's the new rally cry.
The editor-in-large, that should be everyone. Hey, everyone right now, tweet Piers Morgan.
Remember
Piers Morgan and remember Yorktown. So if you're listening, come on, get on it.
Kicked your ass before.
Well, And
just play it.
All right. This is the interview from yesterday. It's Ben Shapiro, editor-in-large at Breitbart, and Piers Morgan on CNN. Piers Morgan.
Riddled with bullet holes in their classroom. And the public demands we speak to it.
Strong words from Vice President Biden, who heads the White House Task Force on Guns. My next guest has strong words for me. He says, I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
I've made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact, rather than address
let's talk about that.
Rather than address your comments to me about standing on the graves of children at Sandy Hook, you can address them to Mark Kelly, because he agrees with everything that I've been saying, because he feels the same way, as does his wife. They're gun owners. They both respect the Second Amendment of the Constitution. They don't want to take away anybody's right to defend themselves with guns.
Well, they want to take away certain types of guns, obviously.
They want to take away assault weapons, which are capable, with magazines like we saw at Aurora and Sandy Hook, of unleashing a ridiculous amount of bullets.
Well, this is a question I wanted to ask you, Piers, because I've seen you talk about assault weapons a lot, and I've seen Mark Kelly talk about assault weapons. The vast majority of murders in this country that are committed with guns are not committed with assault weapons. They're committed with handguns.
Okay,
so are you willing to ban handguns in this country across the country?
No, that's not what I'm asking for.
Why not?
Let me ask you.
Don't you care about the kids who are being killed in Chicago as much as the kids in Sandy Hook?
Yes, I do.
Then why don't you care about banning the handguns in Chicago?
We'll come to that. Let me ask you this. What was the weapon used at Aurora in the movie theater?
It was an assault rifle, sure.
Okay. What was the weapon used in the Oregon shopping mall?
I believe it was an assault rifle, correct?
Okay. What was the weapon used at Sandy Hook?
It was an assault rifle.
What was the weapon used at the incident around Christmas when the firemen were lured to their deaths, the New York State firemen?
And bought illegally? That was an assault rifle.
Right, so the last 4 mass shootings in America were all the assault rifles.
And the vast
that is the reason, Mr. Shapiro. And you can smirk at me, and you can laugh at me.
I'm not smirking.
And you can accuse me of standing on the graves of dead children.
And being a bully, yes.
But that is the reason that people like me and Mark Kelly and Gabrielle Giffords want to have assault weapons like that removed from civilian hands.
Your passion on the issue doesn't really justify the rationale for why you want to ban assault weapons, but not handguns.
You don't understand why we want to remove the preferred weapon of choice, these killing machines, from the hands of deranged young men.
All I'm asking is for you to be philosophically consistent. If what you're worried about is the removal of killing machines from the hands of deranged young people, then maybe we should talk about a blanket gun ban. And let's get to what the left really wants here. And you say that you're for the Second Amendment.
Why is it about left or right? Because in Britain this never is about left or right, this issue. Why is it here?
Well, we can talk about Britain in a second. I think the reason that it's about left and right here is because fundamentally, the right believes that the basis for the Second Amendment, and they believe in the Second Amendment, the basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense, and it's not about hunting. It is about resistance to government tyranny. That's what the founders said, and that's what the right believes in this country.
Which tyranny are you fearing yourself?
I fear the possibility of a tyranny rising in this country in the next 50 to 100 years. Let me tell you something, Piers. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe didn't fear that is why they are now ashes in Europe. So this kind of leftist revisionist history, where there's never any fear of democracy going usurpacious or tyrannical, is just that. It's fictitious.
Just to clarify your position then, the answer to Sandy Hook, as it was to Aurora, as it was to Gabrielle Giffords, as it was to Columbine and Virginia Tech, is you do nothing. Is that your position?
And that's not my position.
What is your position?
My position is that we have to calibrate laws that are designed to get guns out of the hands of bad people, and keep guns in the hands of good people who want to buy them. This idea of more guns versus less guns.
How do you do that?
Well, I think one of the ways that you do that is by better screening for mental illness. I think that you do better background checks.
Was Adam Lanza's mother a good person?
I don't know whether she was a good person or a bad person. I know she was irresponsible with her guns.
Has there been any evidence to suggest she was not a good person?
No, but there's been significant
So
evidence.
by your criteria,
no,
she would have been able... Wait a minute. By your criteria of the good people should be allowed the guns and the bad people shouldn't, she would have been allowed the guns.
She was an irresponsible person. She didn't keep her guns locked up. And that should be against the law. If you have a mentally ill person in your house,
so then
we're talking about laws that we can both agree on here. I don't know why you're disagreeing with me on this.
Then she becomes a bad person, does she?
Well, no, it's not a matter of morally good versus morally bad.
You set the criteria, good and bad. So is she good or bad?
You're right, Piers. I should have said responsible versus irresponsible. That's correct.
Okay, so she goes from good to bad.
No, she goes from responsible to irresponsible.
Let's take a break. Let's come back and talk more about this because we don't agree.
That's bad.
Let's. You know what? You're kicking my ass, so let's take a break.
So he eviscerated him essentially in that. He never gave him a leg. Piers did exactly what he always does. Once he got uncomfortable because he was losing in the logic, he pushed it away. Well, what we do in Britain? When we get back to Britain, that's what Shapiro did to him. He threw it back in his face. No. We're not changing the point of the argument. We're going to keep it on point. I thought Ben Shapiro was outstanding. One of the things you brought up when we first listened to it, I wish you never said assault weapons because, again, that's a made-up fallacy.
Yep.
And he kept pushing the same thing, and the left does the same thing. I agree with them. They bring out these dead folks and make it about them. Well, these last 4 mass killings were with the AR-15, the quote-unquote assault rifle. And that's what this is all about. Well, a majority of the gun violence, quote unquote, in America is done with a handgun. So he made an excellent point. So why wouldn't it just be sweeping then? If you really want to take the guns out of people's hands, the violence, why don't you just make it, well, I don't want to do that. No, you don't want to do that yet. Because if you try to do it all at once, everyone would absolutely lose it. Like Krauthammer said, it would cause absolute uprising in this country if they try to take the guns all at once. No, we're going to do a little bit. So we're going to go after the quote-unquote assault rifles, AR-15, the quote-unquote military-style rifles. I did a test the other day because I had to know for myself, just in case there's a strange danger lurking in my house.
Okay.
I have several weapons. I just used my pistol, my Glock, because I just wanted to know for sure. I loaded it. I put it back inside the safe. I actually double locked it just in case.
Okay. And how many people did it kill?
Wait. I left it there for 48 hours.
Okay.
I played loud, annoying music. I didn't turn the lights off in the room once.
Okay.
I occasionally kicked the safe.
Okay.
I had my dogs bark at it a few times. I tried to mug the safe.
Okay.
Didn't shoot me once.
Really? How can that be?
I am just as stunned as you.
I think you need to send that back to Glock.
It must be
clearly
defective.
Something's wrong with it. Yeah.
There has to be something with the safety trigger. I don't know what it is. It didn't go off once. And even when I went in to unload it and clear it,
right, it didn't bite you.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I don't understand that.
I don't either. So I don't know. And obviously, if you guys are out there, 347-205-9399, have you been randomly attacked by a gun that was not being manipulated by a human being? Let me know.
Yeah, if you have, please let us know because we'd like to document that.
So yeah, so this whole argument of it's the assault rifles.
What would that same Glock be if you had a nail that was protruding out and you had to hammer it into place and that's the only thing you had and you used?
It'd be a hammer.
No, it'd be a gun, but you'd be using it as
that'd be a hammer,
right?
No different.
Now, what about if you had a pen and you stabbed it in somebody's neck?
It'd be a stabbing tool or a stabbing weapon.
So the weapon is not in the object. The weapon is how that object is employed.
Yes.
In essence, that is merely a tool.
Yeah.
But the person is the weapon. Practically a ninja.
Well, and it goes back to cars, and it goes. You could apply it to anything that's caused somebody to lose their life because somebody used it away from what it was designed.
We need to outlaw trees, and now hang on a second. Hear me out.
Oh God.
No, look. I think that the green movement and the hug a tree people they are clearly murderers, because I know for a fact that trees have killed a lot of people, especially when cars drive headfirst into them.
I understand.
How many solo vehicle accidents have you read about in the papers, seen as you drive by on the traffic reports, whatever, that a solo vehicle into a tree has resulted in fatalities? Clearly they're menacing.
Well, you know, and
am I wrong?
They just sit there waiting. Absolutely waiting on their little street corners with their leaves. They have their little squirrels to make it look cute.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you show up and boom.
There it is.
And by the way, if that's the case, we have to outlaw wind because it's a constant accomplice. They're working in concert to commit the act.
It's a conspiracy.
Right. So when are they going to realize?
Who's they?
The left.
The trees?
The gun grabbers.
Okay.
I'd like to call them constitutional terrorists.
I like
at
it.
this point.
Right.
Because if they can label us anything they want, crazy right wing, gun nuts, blah, 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 blah,
right.
blah. The fact that they want to assault and cause great fear and harm to the Constitution is essentially the basis of the word terrorist. That's what a terrorist does. It's cause harm and fear to the masses, which they're doing. I'm part of the masses.
You lost me.
Wait. So that's where the terrorist is, and they are going and using the Constitution to do it. So they're Constitution. They're not religious terrorists.
They're using the terrorists in order to enact their own agenda to destroy the Constitution.
Yes. So they're constitutional terrorists, in my opinion. And I think I move, Sackhead Shaun, that the left progressives forever be known as constitutional terrorists.
Interesting.
What do you think about that?
I think that's interesting.
And why?
Yeah, because. Hey, I've heard this argument, which is awesome. Have you heard the argument of, there were only muskets around when the Second Amendment was written?
Yes.
And I bring this up. Okay, what was the military weapon when the Second Amendment was written? Oh, it was a musket. You freaking jackass.
Right.
And I didn't swear, Rooster, if you're listening. I didn't say the F word.
You know, he just waits until you do that to call in.
I know. That's why I caught myself. And besides, the colonists, some of the colonists had rifles, which was superior in many respects to the musket.
Mm-hmm.
The military issue weapon was the musket, smooth bore, and some private citizens had rifles,
which was
rifled round, more accurate, greater distance.
Right.
So a more effective weapon than the military weapon. I cannot see the
logic.
I can't do it. Hey, we're up against the break.
Why don't we take a break? No, I just wanted to go down a list real quick of the 15 most common causes of death. I just found this on a health website. Can you guess what number one is?
Has to be guns.
No. It's disease of the heart. Number two?
Has to be guns.
Malignant tumors.
Really?
Number three?
Bullets, ammunition.
Cerebrovascular disease. Number four?
Lead poisoning from guns.
We can go all the way down. 15 is homicide. At 0.07% of the population yearly dies of homicide.
Committed by?
It doesn't specify.
So all homicide?
All homicides.
So
it's an even smaller number for guns.
Huh.
Did you know that we are the number one gun owner in the world?
We are? You and I?
You and I are.
Probably. I believe that.
Our country.
Oh, okay.
We are.
How many times have we been invaded?
Once. Invaded?
Yeah.
Once. 1812.
The War of 1812.
Yeah.
Didn't the Japanese start coming up the Aleutian chain?
Yeah, and I'll give you Pearl Harbor. You know what?
That wasn't an invasion.
It was territory. It was an attack.
And it was an attack. It wasn't an invasion.
That's true. They didn't make land.
When's the last time we were invaded? What about by criminal aliens? Does that count?
No.
Okay.
And I love the fact that you still brought up criminal aliens, because that was something from one of our early podcasts, and that makes me laugh. Ooh, hold on, I'm thinking. What about a leader of a foreign nation coming here that's a terrorist nation?
No, I wouldn't say that. The United Nations, I guess you could argue.
Why don't we take a break, and we're going to try to figure this out. We'll try to figure out the last time we were invaded. We'll look at the timeline.
No, we're playing a game when we get back, because we're going to get on a separate topic.
I know, but We'll figure this out by the time we get back. We'll have a solid number. We're up to 1. We'll do some work. 347-205-9399. This is the Sackheads Radio Show.
Hey guys, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. I want to talk to you a minute about our friends over at HomefrontHugs.com. They're an amazing organization of volunteers who take their time, effort, and money to take care of our troops overseas as they serve our great nation. HomefrontHugs.com. You can donate, write letters to troops, adopt a troop, you name it, you can do it. Help those wonderful folks who protect our freedoms. Go to HomefrontHugs.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Shaun and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the wingnut leaders throughout the world to give our men and women of the armed forces a job, as well as all the anarchists, terrorists, and Occupy folks that give our men and women in uniform on the home front, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and first responders, job security here in the States as well. So thank all you wingnuts out there. This is Sackhead Clint saying have a good day.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. You know, we often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school board, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Politigal Network, Politigal Network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PoliticalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, check out PoliticalNetwork.com or Twitter at PoliticalUSA.
Hey guys, do you like our news briefs? Better yet, do you like the amazing voice that does our news briefs? Do you need some audio work done? Check out PlatinumVocalCords.com. Our friend Vanessa has years of broadcast experience. She's an absolute professional. She'll work with you, get the sound exactly how you'd want it. So go to PlatinumVocalCords.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you. Hey guys, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. I know I've said it before. Check out our friends at conservativeoutcry.net, but I really mean it. If you want interesting and exciting political commentary and analysis, that is the place to get it. Different, always spot on, always truthful, never pulling a punch. conservativeoutcry.net. Tell Rooster to get Bulldog back on and that Sackheads Radio sent you. And also, coming soon, the Sackheads Radio Forum on conservativeoutcry.net.
This is Sal from New York. Please listen to Sackheads Radio.
Now back to Clint and Shaun on Sackheads Radio, bringing elegancy and quality.
We are back on the Sackheads Radio. So 347-205-9399 is our phone number. So now I get a gumdrop from Sacco every time I read the phone number. So he's treated me well.
I was right.
You were?
The Japanese did, in fact, invade the Aleutian Islands in World War II.
I knew you were right. You're always right.
But I did miss one.
What?
The Confederate States of America invaded the United States of America during the Civil War.
Total of 3 times is the best we can tell, right?
Technically, they were a separate nation. They seceded from the United States. They did, in fact, invade the United States. So those are the 3 times. Now, during the Mexican-American War in 1846 to 1848-ish, Mexican troops did cross the Rio Grande, and the Battle of the Alamo took place during the war for Texas independence. But Texas was not a part of the United States until 1845.
What was that?
What is that?
I'm on it. Don't worry about it.
What was that?
Did that come over? That was amazing. What? I just hit a button. I'm screwy. Go on.
Okay. On that note, it's time to play Wheel of Randomness. I'm spinning the Wheel of Randomness. So hang on.
We are going to spin the Wheel of Randomness.
Okay, I'm going to let you read what it says on the Wheel of Randomness.
So while it spins, the Wheel of Randomness is whatever word it lands on is the primary word for the evening or action.
Okay.
And it's coming to a halt here, and it looks like the word is assault.
Assault.
So now, as the left can do, we're just going to assign different words to different things and have it have a whole new meaning. So we're going to add the word assault to everything.
Now the Wheel of Randomness does have a time frame set up.
It does. It'll be for the next 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah, we won't carry this bit past 3. We'll get bored of it quick.
I'm going to take a drink of my assault coffee.
All right, and let's see. Moving on. What's on the assault list for tonight's assault topics?
Well, I'm going to get my assault page out.
Okay, you do that.
And it looks like we're going to discuss. This is. I like this one. Top Senate Democrats are currently trying to urge Obama to take unilateral action on the debt ceiling, and they're trying to use the 14th Amendment to do it, which clearly doesn't apply. And I wonder if it's racist that they're even bringing that up, trying to get him to take the 14th Amendment. Because
it can't be racist because they want to do it.
Ooh, that's a good point.
If we were going to do it, if the right was going to do it, we might be in a little bit of trouble there, but
might be a lot of trouble. Well, I didn't know if Harry Reid was trying to send a message because Obama is African American, and the original intent of the 14th Amendment was had to do specifically with granting former slaves U.S. citizenship because they weren't U.S. citizens. They were emancipated, and they weren't a citizen of any state at the time because the states they were emancipated from were no longer states. So granted them citizenship, and also was set in motion in order to try and reinforce the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So since it had to do with African Americans and they were asking him to invoke it, I'm wondering if Harry Reid is in fact a racist bastard.
Would you please explain? Go on.
What?
Go into depth about this. Why is Harry Reid a racist bastard?
Look, if the right had tried to use an amendment to the Constitution that had to do with slavery and granting them rights or something, and then they were going to try and have an African American invoke that amendment, clearly they were doing it because it's racist. Right? Look, I'm demonstrating the absurd in order to by being absurd.
What? Being absurd?
I know. Anyways, so the assault Senate Democrats.
I love how you can just throw the word assault on anything.
And it sounds evil, right?
You could have said Senate Democrats.
You could have said Senate Democrats, and it would have been just evil. So, excuse me. According to this report from FoxNews.com, top Senate Democrats are trying to urge Obama in order to take unilateral action on the debt ceiling. And the debt talks obviously are kind of at a stalemate right now. And Senate Majority Harry Reid, Democrat out of Nevada, is one of those urging Obama to consider options like invoking the 14th Amendment to the Constitution in order to get around this $16.4 trillion cap on government borrowing.
Right.
And what they're trying to say is, in quoting the 14th Amendment, that the terms validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. And they're saying, hey, well, the president can invoke that. Well, like we pointed out on last week's show.
No, he can't.
No, you
just can't.
Jackwagons, because Section 5 of that amendment says...
Assault Section 5.
Assault Section 5 says, the assault Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this assault article. I added the assault in there for effect. So
I find that to be an assault.
He doesn't have the power. Now, I will, to his credit, to the president's credit, the White House has not bitten on this. They have before in the past, in the previous debt ceiling debates. They said, well, we're going to take unilateral action based on the 14th Amendment. And this time around, they're kind of backing off on that. They're not taking that bit. But the crazy loon that Harry Reid is doesn't get it or doesn't care, and so he's urging them to invoke that 14th Amendment. Now, funny thing on the 14th Amendment is it doesn't even have to do with the debt ceiling at all. It was enacted as a result. Look, in 1865, Andrew Johnson became president. He was Abraham Lincoln's vice president. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Andrew Johnson was a Democrat. This is going to be important here in a second. And they ran on this ticket as the National Union ticket. So you have a Republican and a Democrat, which actually might not be a bad thing today.
It's not the worst thing, that's for sure. It's got to be better than what's going on now.
Andrew Johnson favored a quick restoration of the states that had seceded, and his Reconstruction plan did not give protection to former slaves under the Constitution, which obviously caused the Republican-dominated Congress to try and enact legislation such as the 1866 Civil Rights Bill in order to protect the rights of the former slaves, specifically the right to due process and equal protection under the law, and so forth. So the 14th Amendment was passed in order to kind of solidify the citizenship of the former slaves as naturalized citizens in the United States, because, as I discussed previously, they were not citizens of any state at that time because those states who had seceded were no longer states of the United States. So the 14th Amendment granted that, and it really had to do with protecting the rights of the freed slaves, specifically as it relates to due process and equal protection under the law. And the debt that it's talking about in the 14th Amendment, it talks about the 14th Amendment under Section 4. It talks about the debt incurred or obligations incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss of emancipation of any slaves, that those debts and obligations shall be held illegal and void, but that the public debt of the United States,
the assault public debt,
shall not be questioned. So basically it says, hey, the public debt incurred by the United States is a valid debt, shall not be questioned, but the debt incurred by the states that were in rebellion against us, we're not honoring that.
Right.
And neither are they. It's an illegal debt, and you can't have your slaves back. So it's very clear, and so now they're trying to twist this into, the whole, the validity of the public debt. That gives the president the right to raise the debt ceiling. It has nothing to do with that. And, the fact that they're using an article that was written to protect and guarantee due process to African Americans and ensure their citizenship and help ensure their protection under the law, to now try and twist that meaning is a little offensive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm going to bring up another topic that came up that's kind of along the same lines, but why it's also offensive. Did you hear their latest idea to get out of the debt? And I love this one.
Is it to coin a $1 trillion coin?
A $1 trillion
and deposit
coin.
It that would be awesome.
How are we going to get that money? I don't understand.
What do you mean? We just created it. What are you talking about? How are we going to get that?
Have you seen the one I've seen anyhow?
Hang on a sec. If I were going to mint a $1 trillion coin, I would make it smaller than a dime, just to screw with people.
If I was going to mint a $1 trillion coin, I'd be at a slot machine in Vegas. Come on, max this out. Come on, max spin. Because that's better, and you have a better chance of making money off that than you do by just printing it, saying this is worth $1 million, and throwing it in the reserve.
But it's going to devalue our currency because
that's not important. It's $1 trillion more.
How do you create $1 trillion out of thin air? It's not real. It's a theory. Our monetary system is a theory. So if everybody said our monetary system is crap
and walked away, we will now use
Hot Wheels cars
and wrestling masks as our currency.
Yes.
Assault wrestling masks and assault
Hot Wheel cars should be outlawed.
Instead of doing this $1 trillion coin thing, which the one I've seen, the mock-up that I saw, had Obama's face on it.
You're kidding me.
No. I don't know if that was the official, but I did some research because I said, well, what's it going to look like? I got to know. I'm one of those people. And it had that, which didn't shock me at all.
Did it give the dimensions?
No.
I would either make it so big
or enormous.
But I would either make it just so incredibly, ridiculously big, or I would probably make it smaller than a dime.
No, I'd make it ridiculously big So when they have to bring it over to the Federal Reserve, you need like 5 guys just rolling it across the street from the mint to the reserve.
No, I'd mint it.
Or bring it to China, this ginormous coin, to pay off $1 trillion of our debt. Just like land off the plane and just kind of throw it at the president and get back on and leave.
And make it out of lead. Like not even don't make it out of anything that's even worth anything. Or like pine.
Make it out of lead and unfold it when you get there because lead's so pliable.
Like pine.
Yeah.
Make it out of wood, like a big wooden nickel.
Balsa. What a ridiculous idea. Hey, let's print $1 trillion coin. How about this? If you really just want to destroy our currency, why don't you say add $1,000 to what are the face value of the dollar you have in your pocket? So if it's $1, it's worth $1,000. If it's a 5, it's worth 5,000. We'll be like Zimbabwe with their money pretty soon, because that's all this is doing.
Why do you have to be so racist?
No,
why do you have to bring up Why do you have to bring up an African country in order to illustrate a point when you're talking about an African American president?
Because they have such a poor monetary system that they have like $1 trillion bill and it's worth like $8.
Hey, me and Pierce understand the real reason you brought
Don't
that
assault
up.
me.
And they.
Don't assault me on this.
Your assault argument is making very little sense. Here's why I would make it very, very small. Because you're going to get that guy who's making minimum wage, and he's going to trip while carrying it into the Treasury, and it's going to like go down a storm drain or get lost. And some 10-year-old
parking meter with
and some 10-year-old kid with like a friggin' metal detector is going to pick it up like, what's this?
It is the most ridiculous.
Let me get this straight, Bernard. You lost a $1 trillion coin. We're going to be deducting your pay.
Until this is all paid back. And this includes sick and vacation time, which you probably have $500 million worth. So, you want to talk about just throwing crap against the wall to see what sticks. Let's just mint $1 trillion coin. Where is this money coming from?
It's created.
We don't have it. You can't keep printing it. The more you print, the less it's worth. It's simple economy.
Economy?
Economic.
You're getting so fired up right now.
Because this is the most ridiculous, and they're entertaining this. It's not like Chris Matthews said, I have an idea. All right, everyone would know it'd be stupid because it's coming out of his fat mouth. No, this is coming from the people that are running our nation right now, and they think this is a plausible idea. It's crap.
Hey, the people reelected him. Who are you?
And they may do it a third time.
Really? You're going to freaking spoil it?
No. I just said they would. I said they may. Listen, I don't know what I said. I've been drinking all day. Hey, we have a caller on the line who's been holding patiently, and it's Tony from Ohio. He had a gun question, probably for you because you're the genius.
Oh, great.
Hey, hey, Tony, you there?
I have no questions. I had a bunch of stats, but I don't even care about guns right now. That was the most hilarious crap I've ever heard in my life. Let's have a wooden nickel made out of $1 million trillion.
Hey, you know what? That comment just made my night.
Thank you.
You guys have a great show, and I've never heard it before, but this is like the greatest time I've ever spent on hold in my life. That was awesome. So let me ask you a question. Okay, are you guys like who did you support in the primaries? Forget the general election. Who did you support in the primaries? Because I've got a guess here, but I just want to make sure that I'm not nuts.
I liked Rick Santorum.
Okay, I am nuts then.
No, I actually in the primaries I was more for Newt.
I'm totally nuts. I was a Ron Paul supporter. The way you guys were talking about the Fed and what sounded like Austrian economics to me, it sounded like Ron Paul supporters.
No,
I don't care if you support Ron Paul or not, though. It's okay.
No, we do. We both really like Ron Paul. I liked Rick Santorum for different. I liked Ron Paul. I liked Rick Santorum. Those were both my two front runners, but I was pulling more for Santorum. But I am a huge Ron Paul fan.
Yeah, Dr. Paul. We've talked about him numerous times in the show. We hold him in the highest regard. He was one of the first people when the pirates were really bad over in Somalia who said, hey, let's issue letters of marque. We did a whole show on that a long time ago.
We actually applied for some, but we didn't get any.
No, God bless you guys for the letters of marque and reprisal, because who the hell even knows what that is anymore besides us three?
No, Dr. Paul.
Hey, that's not true. People that downloaded that podcast that know what it is now.
I think like 10 of them was my parents, and
I downloaded it twice. I have 2 computers. That's not the point. We educated. Hey, Tony,
you guys are awesome.
because you really held on for a long time, and I definitely want you to be able to say your part, and I want to know what these stats are. So what do you got for us?
No, I mean, you guys had this great show title, like Call Piers Morgan. I just thought that was hilarious. And the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a complete loon. I mean, you know, the gun stats are clear, right? I mean, you see leftists. I debate with these people every day on forums on the internet. I try my hardest to educate people as nicely as possible, but between me and you know, on the fence post, because we're all just a bunch of guys that tend to know what we're talking about here, they're morons, and they won't listen to reason or logic, no matter what. Go ahead.
And they use the typical left tactic. If you're not having the argument they want, they call you insane. And if you try to get them to have the argument your side or understand your side, they call you insane. So it doesn't matter which way you argue. If you have their argument, you're a nut because you don't necessarily agree. But if you try to get them to have your argument, you're a screwball. So there's no win.
The other problem is we've allowed the left to frame the argument.
Yeah.
They frame the argument in terms of, does it apply to the militia? And if you get a chance, listen to last week's show, because I actually made a ridiculous argument to how if that's their argument, then it doesn't apply to women unless they're enrolled in the National Guard based on the U.S. Code. It's just a ridiculous argument, but that's their logic against them. But if they argue militia or non-militia, and they don't talk about the original intent, which is to prevent us and enable the people to resist and rise up against a tyrannical government.
Thank you.
That's not the argument that's being held. It's not a matter of having guns in the hands of the people that need to be military-grade weapons. We get these ridiculous, well, these were muskets. Well, yeah, knuckleheads, because that was the military weapon at the time.
And we were privately hands at the time. You were allowed to own a cannon. I mean, it's not like there was any gun control. It's not just guns. When they say right to bear arms, they don't mean just guns. You know what I mean?
They don't. If you want to purchase an aircraft carrier and you can afford to put 25 F-18s on it, then go for it.
Right.
You know.
And who can afford that, though? That's why they make ridiculous arguments. They'll be like, well, you said, by your logic, we should have nukes. Name one guy who's got $6 trillion to buy a nuclear weapon. You know what I mean?
We're trying to pass away here at the Sackheads Radio Show because we want to start doing our show from an aircraft carrier, only because it's safer. So that's on our to-do list. But, hey, Tony, here's what I think we're going to do, too. I'm going to put you back on hold because we're going to pop into a break here in a minute, and I'm going to have our call screener get your name and address. We're going to send you a signature Sackheads Radio picture so you can throw darts at it.
Oh, bring me back on. I got to talk to you guys some more. This is great.
All right, we'll bring you back on.
Okay,
we'll bring you back. Quick break here in a minute. I'll throw you on hold, and then we'll bring you back on, Tony.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you in a sec.
So we'll get him back. We'll talk to Tony. Sorry, we'll get his gun stats straightened out.
Socko get his info.
Socko's going to grab his info. We're going to take a quick break because, well, we like to do that around here. We'll be back in a minute with the Sackheads Radio Show. 347-205-9399. If you're on hold, we might get to you.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Shaun and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey folks, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank the men and women of our armed forces, as well as our first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for making this country and our communities a better and safer place. God bless.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. You know, we often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school boards, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Political Network. POLITIGAL network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PolitigalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, check out PolitigalNetwork.com or Twitter at PolitigalUSA.
Hey guys, it's Shaun from Sackheads Radio. I know I've said it before. Check out our friends at conservativeoutcry.net, but I really mean it. If you want interesting and exciting political commentary and analysis, that is the place to get it. Different, always spot on, always truthful, never pulling a punch. conservativeoutcry.net. Tell Rooster to get Bulldog back on and that Sackheads Radio sent you. And also, coming soon, the Sackheads Radio Forum on conservativeoutcry.net.
Hey guys, it's Shaun from Sackheads Radio. I want to talk to you a minute about our friends over at homefronthugs.com. They're an amazing organization of volunteers who take their time, effort, and money to take care of our troops overseas as they serve our great nation. Homefronthugs.com. You can donate, write letters to troops, adopt a troop, you name it, you can do it. Help those wonderful folks who protect our freedoms. Go to homefronthugs.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank our men and women in uniform of the armed forces. Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank our men and women. Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank the men and women of our armed forces, as well as our... God.
You going to mention me this time?
Thank you, Shaun. You said mention you, right?
Oh.
You totally need to keep that as an outtake.
Now back to Clint and Shaun on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
And we're back. I don't even know. The last thing I remember before we went to break is we're going to start doing our show from an
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Hey, we have a couple of salt callers.
We do have a couple of salt callers. First,
and we're going to bring Tony back.
We are going to bring Tony in.
But I think Lauren wanted to jump in.
Lauren wanted to jump in. And, hey, Lauren, we are back. What did you have to talk about?
How you guys doing?
Doing
good. How you doing, man?
Good. Calling y'all from good old communist California out here in Los Angeles.
Hey, communist Cali.
Don't worry, I know. Hey, I'm a proud, responsible gun owner amongst all these liberals, so don't you guys worry. But you know,
it's good to be one in a million.
Oh, I tell you, I'm sitting here scratching my head. I'm kind of dumbfounded. I can't say I'm surprised at what these idiots are doing up in Washington and coming out with new laws and new regulations and, you know, this whole gun control debate. I can tell you the laws they're trying to implement throughout the country is what I've had to live with here for many years, with bullet buttons on rifles and not being able to own more than a 10-round magazine. And
yeah, but now you got your member Yee, who's trying to even get rid of your bullet buttons, and they're trying to cap your ammunition allotment now out there too.
Yeah, they want you to register it. You're only allowed to buy X amount. You're completely right. And of course, another thing that doesn't address anything, because it doesn't mention people who want to actually pack their own ammo and make your own ammo. So,
that'll be. I bet you in order to buy the powder and the parts, you'll have to register just the same.
Most likely. Hey, I mean, listen, we all heard what Feinstein said. If she could get 51 votes to get them all, she would, you know.
Absolutely.
Of course, but she's special, and so are elected officials, or if you believe that we have free and fair elections here. So I'll just go and say our officials, obviously they can have firearms and their bodyguards can have fully automatic weapons, and she could have a permit to carry a concealed weapon. But, of course, the common folk cannot, because obviously guns equal more crime, not less crime in their eyes. And if you want a gun, you're bad, and you are a terrorist.
Well, and it's one of those things, too, and the president himself just extended it so his protection can last a lot longer than it was by law, and it went from 10 years to...
Well, it was for life, and then Bill Clinton signed a law that made it for 10 years.
And now he signed it back. And actually, Bob is in the chat room. We haven't had Bob in a while. But
hey, Bob, welcome back.
He brought up a good point. Eric Holder said, I think it was in '94, we need to brainwash people into disliking guns. He said that at a press conference. So It's out there,
Oh, how
Lauren.
very Cass Sunstein of him.
Yeah, how very Cass Sunstein. Hey, Lauren, thanks for your call in California.
Thanks, Lauren.
I don't know. I can't tell you to be illegal, but, you may want to think about burying them and finding a safe spot. I'm just saying, that's up to you.
I hear you, and I did see that video from Holder, and that was, I did see that Eric Holder video, and you're right. He wanted to take out a bunch of media ads and brainwash. That's exactly how he put it.
And they're doing it as we speak. They're just using current events to do it. Hey, Lauren, thanks for the call, my friend.
Take care, bud. Be
Bye,
safe
guys.
out there.
Thank you.
They're actually doing it with the stars. That video we talked
they have
about
that
last
whole
week.
video that just came out with the stars.
Let's bring.
I'm going to bring Tony in because
bring Tony back.
Tony had a whole bunch of gun stats and seeing how we've gone back to guns. Tony, you with us, bud?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Hey,
Welcome
man.
back.
So I keep saying I'm going to let you get your stats out, and then I keep getting away. We keep getting distracted. We don't pay attention very well on the show sometimes, so our continuity falls apart.
We actually have attention deficit disorder, and I may be bipolar, but I may not be. I'm off my meds right now.
I'm just trying to stay on the air as long as I can. I really don't have anything to say. I'm just kidding.
What gun stats did you have for us, Tony?
I did a bunch of looking into different conflicting stats because liberals and me debate a lot on different forums, and I noticed that they keep quoting the same stats over and over again from a Harvard study, which I have another Harvard study that conflicts with. And their main stats are that in OECD nations, which are the top 23 income nations in the world, in other words, the richest nations in the world, that gun crime is correlated with gun ownership. Problem is, that's basically admitting that poverty causes gun crime. Because if you look at all nations in the world, no such correlation. Shows that when you look at all nations, that there is no corollary. In fact, the top 9 gun ownership nations in the world have a 3 times lower gun murder and suicide rate than do the bottom 9 gun ownership nations in the world. So whenever they use the word OECD nations, you should immediately have a red flag go up. The other red flag is the word homicide. When they say, well, gun homicide or homicide in general is tied to gun ownership, you should notice that they're using the word homicide and not murder. Now, in most people's general everyday language, colloquially, you think of homicide as murder because of TV shows like, CSI Homicide, etc. The fact is that homicide includes suicides, it includes legal self-defenses, and it includes accidents. So it's nonsense.
It also includes justifiable homicide by law enforcement, too.
Yes, exactly, correct. So when they use the word homicide or OECD nations, you should immediately go, this is nonsense. Now, when I looked at, and I broke down these stats myself, both through other people's studies from Harvard Law and Public Policy, which is a different department, but the same college that Obama went to, by the way, I noticed that when I broke them down myself or I broke them down according to how they did in the study, it came out the same. There is no correlation between gun ownership and gun murder rates. In fact, you look at a country like England, which Piers Morgan likes to talk about, right? Piers doesn't want to tell you that they have the highest violent crime rate in the whole EU, and it's 4 times per capita, and it's 4 times higher than it is in the United States. They also don't want to tell you that they have the 4th highest murder rate in the EU, and if you look at all the stats, it's quite comparable to the murder rate in the United States. True, when neither of our countries had any gun control, like in the 19th century, we still had a higher murder rate than them. But that wasn't because of more guns. It had nothing to do with per capita guns. It had everything to do with we're a rebellious culture. We don't take authority very well, and that's a good thing. So when they try to tell you that there's all kinds of reasons to believe that less guns equals less crime, tell them they're full of it. If they just look at murder and they just look at suicide, we have lower rates because of gun ownership, not the opposite. I'd also point out there are 3 major reasons, possibly 4, and I'll give all 4 real briefly, of high gun murder rates. And you may or may not want to hear these depending on what you believe. Number 1, 40 to 70% of gun murder in this country is caused by drug prohibition. In the prohibition period, the crime rate rose 24% in 1 year from 1920 to 21. It rose 78% over the 13 years of prohibition. In the year it ended, 1933, we had a 40% decline in murder rate. That's a huge drop. If you look at countries that have either decriminalized or legalized drugs, which there's not really any that totally legalized, but there's a bunch that have decriminalized, they've all had severe drops in murder rate. I know that doesn't fit a lot of people. I'm libertarian, so it fits my beliefs, but it doesn't fit a lot of other people's beliefs. The second cause is domestic violence. Go ahead.
I said it fits you, and Penn Jillette has the same opinions as well.
Yeah, he's a libertarian. That's correct. Then you've got the second cause, which is domestic violence. Domestic violence, again, this might not fit your belief. It might. I don't know. War causes domestic violence majorly. There's a guy that said this years ago, I won't claim credit for the quote, but he said, one generation's war is the next generation's crime wave. And that's true, corollary in every country of the world and county by county in the United States. Veterans have a 3 to 4 times higher domestic violence rate than do people who are non-veterans. That relates to their children, who also have a 3 times higher rate of criminality, and that includes violent crime. That leads to police who have to deal with that crime of having a 3 to 4 times higher, almost exactly the same as soldiers, domestic violence rate, as do normal general population citizens. So how do we fix this problem? Well, one is to stop fighting wars of aggression and occupation that aren't direct self-defense. The other way is to stop dealing with soldiers and cops with domestic violence like we do everybody else with domestic violence, and start treating it like, hey, we're not going to disincentivize you turning in somebody who's beating their wife or beating their kids. We're going to start dealing with it like it's a problem caused by the government, and we're going to try to find you treatment and help you. And this doesn't have to be funded by the government. It can be whatever, but regardless, it's cheaper than dealing with just imprisoning these people. I want to point out that about 50% of the criminals in our prison today, unfortunately, disgustingly, are veterans. And it's a sad thing that we need to deal with. We need to help our veterans more and not less. The third cause is psychotropic drugs. Psychotropic drugs have been found to be in almost 99% of every mass murder period. The 99% is a little exaggerated. It's actually 90-something% of mass murders, period. So the mass murder rate has declined since 1929. It's not gone up. Our murder rate's declined in the last 20 years, 49%. It's declined overall in the last 50 years, so there's really no rampant murder rate. There's really no rampant mass murder rate. It's really all declining. Meanwhile, guns are going up in ownership, are going up in permits, are going up in assault weapons that are permeated in the society, in high-capacity magazines. So if there's no correlation there, there can't be any causation. The same can be said of violent video games. The same can be said of violent movies, sexualized movies. All of these things have been permeated more and more over the last 20 years while our murder rates and suicide rates have been declining severely. Our violent crime rates have been declining severely. So there's no causation with any of those things. The causation is with drug war, domestic violence, psychotropic drugs, and the fourth thing, which is poverty. And the reason I bring up poverty is because when they name those OECD nations, those liberals that like to bring those nations up, those 23 richest nations in the world, what they're really doing is admitting that poverty is the problem. Because otherwise, why would they control for poverty?
You know, you bring up some interesting points. I had a couple areas there that I would like to address with you. And one it would be, you talked about the violent video games and so forth, and we see this over the past 20 years. And while our murder rates overall have not increased, we have seen an increase in one specific area, and that would be the mass murder, mass homicide incidents at schools and at public events. Those have increased, starting with, and now Columbine was not the first mass casualty, mass murder incident, but it was the first or the first big one at a high school that really drew national attention to it, where law enforcement had to change their tactics and so forth. And we have seen an increase in school-related shootings, and that's even spread from the high schools to elementary schools, universities, and so forth. And again, I don't believe that's a gun problem. But I found Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman wrote an excellent book on killing, where he addresses some of the psychological effects of some of that stuff and desensitizing the person towards violence and drawing the correlation to how soldiers and law enforcement were trained for combat situations. So while I agree that may not have an overall increase in homicide or violent rates in the United States as a whole, I think in a particular segment of the population where we're seeing these type of violence acts, these type of violent acts, I think that correlation can be drawn in that specific segment of what we're seeing in the schools, if that makes sense.
Let me point out that you're right, but let me also point out that what you're doing is you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you. You're pointing out a very specific segment of the society, admittedly, and that's good. I'm glad you're doing that, and you're right. There is a correlation there among that very specific segment. I will not deny that. What I will say is that in the general population, there's been studies done on violent video games where they've shown that actually it's correlated with a drop in violent crime. Why? Because generally, not insane people, not kids that have schizophrenia or schizoid, or taking psychotropic drugs, but normal population, you're keeping them indoors. It's like, hell no. But you're keeping them indoors, and you're not seeing them. And let's just be frank. Generally, young males, either adolescent or young adult, they have violent tendencies due to hormonal imbalances during that period of time in our development. It's just the way it is. We are more aggressive during that period than any other time in our lives. I know I'm in my 30s now. I've calmed way down compared to my early 20s and teenage years. During that period of time, if you're kept indoors, you're not on the street committing violent crime. And they've shown that violent video games actually, believe it or not, have actually caused a decrease in violent crime during that time period. Now, you might not say it's causal. Maybe I'm stretching it to say causal, but it's definitely correlated. But with that segment that you're talking about, that at-risk segment, for sure there is a correlation. There's no denying that. But those people, I don't think, can be cured through a law, I think that, or censorship. I think that has to be cured through proper parenting or holding the parents responsible legally when they're letting their children be exposed to things when they know their kids are mentally ill. We know that for instance, the woman for this Newtown incident, she let her sons not only be exposed to weapons when she knew they were mentally ill, or this one son was mentally ill, but she took him target shooting.
Yeah.
She showed him how to use it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tony, are you there? Okay. Sorry, we had some weird feedback. I agree with you to a point. And yes, I was talking about that specific segment of the at-risk population for use. I don't think we hold. I'm not in agreement for holding the parents criminally liable for their behavior, specifically when they're 15, 16, 17 years old. I think that's the child's choice, unless, like you said, the parents knew, they acted irresponsibly, they take the child target shooting when they know there's mental issues there, they don't properly secure their firearms. Yes, I absolutely agree, but I don't believe in holding a parent criminally liable if their kid gets a gun illegally somewhere else and then goes and commits an act like that. I'm not for agreement. Yeah, and I'm not for saying these video games and violent movies should be censored or made illegal. Not at all.
But it's up to the. I think that's where it's up to the parents.
Parental, absolutely. It's parental responsibility. Completely agree with you there. We don't need the nanny state. We need parents to step up and be responsible. One thing I wanted to ask you about is and I want to ask the question before I make a statement, because I want to make sure I understand your position and your research. Is you've indicated that the war on drugs, kind of like when we had Prohibition, the war on drugs has caused an increase or can be directly correlated to an increase in gun violence. But then you talk about psychotropic drugs being a contributing factor as well. So on one hand, what I'm understanding, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you right, but what I'm understanding, and I may be incorrect in this, is on one hand you're saying the war on drugs has caused this. Because people have to protect their criminal enterprise and blah, 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 much like Prohibition. But then you have psychotropic drugs, which a lot of them I think you're referring to, like PCP, ketamine, and so forth, which are illegal.
No, I'm referring to antidepressants and stuff. I'm referring to lithium. I'm referring to antidepressants like Prozac. Those are psychotropic drugs. Sorry, I didn't specify.
Okay, I thought you were talking about like a dissociative anesthetic or like a PCP acid type drug. Okay.
No, those are psychedelic, but they're not psychotropic.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's terminology. I'm sorry, I didn't specify. That was my fault.
No, I wasn't understanding. That's why I wanted to ask for clarification. Okay,
Yeah, no
so
problem.
now I understand your argument. Okay.
The psychotropic drugs that I'm talking about actually have shown little efficacy, and I think that's important to point out. The FDA has to do multiple trials on drugs like Prozac and Xanax and such in order to get them to be more effective than sugar pills, aka placebos. They can't pass almost ever on their first trial because they're really not that effective. Meanwhile, they cause severe brain damage in certain sections of the brain, and they cause brain shrinkage. I'm not saying that nobody should be on these drugs. I'm not saying they're not effective for anybody. What I'm saying is they're over-prescribing them to people. And I think we all generally know that in society subconsciously, that they're over-prescribing us with drugs. And the proof of that is efficacy. They have never prescribed more antidepressants than they have now. Meanwhile, the depression rates had never been higher. If I told you that I had a pill that cured cancer and I gave it to you for 20 years, and meanwhile, while I'm giving it to you at higher rates than I've ever given it to any population in the world, and the cancer rates keep going up, you would say, excuse me, this isn't working. And yet we don't question these psychotropic drugs. Over 90% of the cases, and I don't know what the exact number is off the top of my head, but I remember looking at it, and it was 92, 94% of all mass shootings, the shooters are on psychotropic drugs. That includes Newtown. That includes the guys at Columbine. That includes the guy, or one of the guys at Columbine. That includes the Newtown shooter. Then shoots all. I mean, you can just name. Not Newtown shooter. The Aurora shooter, the guy that thought he was the Joker. Over and over again, you can just name incident after incident after incident. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not trying to push a conspiracy theory. I don't believe 9/11 was an inside job. Blah 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 blah. But this is one point that Alex Jones has that's actually correct, that a lot of scientists, doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists are pointing out, that these drugs have little efficacy, let alone are causing negative results in our population because of their overprescription. I wouldn't blame it specifically on that. I know mentally ill people are going to kill people regardless. My brother has schizophrenia, and he's violent. So I know that these people exist. But he never got violent until they put him on psychotropic drugs. Before that, he was wacky, and he heard voices, but he never attacked anybody. After they put him on psychotropics, he attacked the city councilman.
And I want to bring something else up also. There's been a sharp increase in the amount of young boys who are diagnosed with like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and this other things, and they're being put on medications for that from a younger age also.
I live in Ohio. It's the #1 overdiagnosed state for ADHD. My niece is 4 years old. She went to preschool, and they tried to put her on drugs. I'm not BSing you.
That's absolutely ridiculous. It's like if a child's hyper, a child doesn't want to sit down and listen, they want to go play or whatever it is, we need to put them on drugs. Are you kidding me? It's yeah. I get heated over that.
Well, and it started really late 80s, early 90s, because I know I had kids, and me at one point, I had one teacher try to say to me that I had ADHD.
Yeah, but you do.
But yeah, it's close. But at the end of the day, we, I went to the school psychologist and all that stuff, and the school psychologist essentially said, no, the teacher sucks. He's not doing a good job. I get a ton of complaints, and every time the teacher has a student that they don't get along with, this particular teacher, and that she said this to my mother, they send him right here and say there's something wrong with this kid, when there was something wrong with the teacher who ended up getting fired a while later.
Did you go to a public school or private school, may I ask?
Public.
Okay,
and that's what it was.
There's a higher correlation with overdiagnosing and public schools. I also was diagnosed with ADHD when it was back when it was called that. I think it's called ADD now. I was put on Ritalin. I went to a private school, which means that there was a lower diagnosis rate. I quit taking the pills within 6 months because they made me into a zombie. And I got to tell you, my grades were never affected either way, whether I was on them or not.
Yeah, and that wasn't. I never got because I never got to the. I never got officially diagnosed because the school psychologist said no way. And they're not a psychologist. I forget what the guidance counselor or whatever. They said there is absolutely no way there's anything wrong with this kid. It's just the fact that he didn't get along with his teacher, and this was the teacher's response for dealing with children that she didn't like. Is there's something wrong with him. Get him on drugs. Something wrong with him. Get him on drugs. And now that happens more and more. And now you have parents asking for their kids to be put on drugs. which is even crazier to me.
It's like Mother's Little Helper during the 60s and 70s, which was the Valium pill. Now it's the Mother's Little Helper is give your kids medicine instead of yourself. And by the way, Valium was shown not to do what they promised it to do anyway. A lot of women got addicted to Valium. So it's not a good call to have I've talked to a doctor specifically, an actual medical doctor, and he told me, and this is the guy who wrote a book. I don't remember the name of the book offhand. I interviewed him when I was still doing shows. And he told me, here on BTR, he told me that, in fact, the problem is usually vitamin deficiency. That's what's causing a lot of the mental deficiencies, because what happens is you have less vitamin E, less vitamin B, etc., and your body chemically reacts to that, and it shows symptoms of other things that they prescribe other medicines to. He said, let me give you an example. He said, when you take an aspirin, do you have an aspirin deficiency? I go, well, no, of course not. And he goes, well, why did you take the aspirin? I said, because I was in pain. And he goes, well, clearly you had either a hunger issue or maybe you had a virus, but regardless, what you were doing was just treating the pain. He goes, what you're doing when you give people psychotropic drugs is you're not addressing the underlying issue. You're making it worse by not addressing it. What you're doing is giving them pain medication. Imagine if I told you you had cancer and I kept giving you Percocets and which is a pain medication, and not telling you ever to take chemo or to get surgery to have the cancer out.
Right. So you're only treating the effects, but you're not treating the cause.
Right.
And you're treating the painful side of it, or in this case, the acting out or the aggression or whatever. But what they also don't tell you too is, once these kids come off, because their body gets so regimented from being on it, that once they get off and that zombie effect goes away, and then their testosterone takes over again, they go. That's why they become more violent, more act out, way more. It's a terrible cycle, and it's something that's been going on.
I think something else causes brain deficiencies, honestly, and I think it's the university system in this country.
It doesn't help, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have to have some kind of brain deficiency to be a professor at most universities, with the exception of maybe Hillsdale.
Well, I was talking to a young girl on Twitter the other night, and she is she's going to school for journalism, and she's a conservative.
Oh, geez.
And she was talking about just how her professors just rip her apart, and it has nothing to do with about the work she's doing. It's her politics. Mm-hmm. And she's like, hey, I'm not going to school for the politics side of it. I'm going to school to learn how to report and be a good journalist. And they keep trying to beat their agenda down my throat. I'm not going to buy it, but it's still, I'm paying for this. I'm paying for this education. I'm not paying to be indoctrinated. I'm paying to learn how to do a skill, not a way of life. And that's what, these college professors, they feel that they have the right to go up in front and say, oh, well, on top of, you're here to learn Math 101, but I'm also going to teach you how you should feel about politics.
I have a theory.
President or whatever.
I have a theory.
You always have a theory. And
maybe that's where doctorate comes from. You have been indoctrinated. So if you have a doctorate,
you guys go to college?
Well,
you guys go to college?
Yeah.
I did. I dropped out of college, just like I dropped out of high school. I'm an autodidact, which means somebody that self-educates. I've been like that my whole life. I'm self-employed. I'm a professional poker player, actually. I've been playing poker for 5 years. I've been self-employed. Thanks, Obama, for raising my taxes.
Yeah, you're rich, right?
Yeah, you must
and outlawing my ability to play online as well, right?
But here's the good news. Your health insurance is going to be a lot more expensive really soon if you go to the private. It's going to be up, I think, what's it, $2,500 a family for the year. So if you have private health insurance, the New York Times of all newspapers came out this week and said, hey, you know what? Remember how Obama said all these prices were going to go down and you're going to be able to keep your insurance and that's going to go down? Yeah, well, they were wrong. It's going to go up $2,500 a year. So
yeah, but they probably buried it like on A27 or something.
I guess it was on front page. I didn't read it. I heard about it because I refuse to read them. That's just me, though.
Sometimes they have a story that makes sense, but it's like 1 in 1 million.
Yeah, but it's like Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah,
right?
It's usually an obsession. The rest of it's all crap.
The thing I was going to say is when I went to college, I had a professor who was an out-and-out communist. He had a beard that was, down to his belly, and he went to South America and talked about sugarcane And he constantly told me that he was a communist. Guess what he taught? American history. And it was the most ridiculous version of American history you have ever heard. Then I got him again by accident because he took over a class for somebody. I registered for a class for a different teacher or professor, and he ended up being the professor in replacement because that professor got sick or somehow, I think she got married, I don't remember. And it was African American history because you had to take that to graduate, which I of course didn't graduate, and this is one of the reasons I quit. I kept bringing up to him that I'm Sicilian, right, which is an island below Italy, and I kept pointing out to him that we were a slave colony and that we were treated way worse than African American slaves, which I'm not trying to compare the condition. I understand African American slaves went through hell. But I was just trying to show him that they weren't the only slaves in the world, that we also went through slavery. I went to a campus that was almost all black. It was right next to the 30th Projects in Cleveland. And all the black kids kept nodding in agreement with me, and he couldn't stand it. So he gave me a B when I knew I deserved a straight A because I gave all my work. And that's when I quit college. I said, this is nonsense. I said, this guy's a total communist, and if you try to conflict with any of his viewpoints about white guilt or about economics or anything, he will totally shun you and put you down a grade level. And it's like, I'm done, And I think that's what's going on in every university in the country. I think kids are forced to conform in order to get their grade point average that they generally are earning and deserve.
I agree, and I had an argument with somebody because they were talking about African slavery here in the United States and so forth. And first of all, that started when we were under British rule, and we did a lot of things in the Constitution to try and quell some of that. Including the 3/5 clause, in which people say, "Oh, that's clearly racist," but they're ignorant; they don't know what that was really about, or putting a drop-dead date to slavery and so forth. But nobody wants to talk about the fact that the Muslims, the Tripoli pirates, were enslaving the white Europeans, including Americans, after we were no longer under the protection of the British fleet. They were enslaving us because of our views and the fact that their version. Their Quran taught them that was what it was supposed to do, and that's from a report from Jefferson and Adams when they met the Pasha of Tripoli in Great Britain, the ambassador.
I'm not anti-Muslim, but I am from, like I said, my family's from Sicily. Our island was owned by, for a period, every country that you can imagine in the world. One of them was those Tripoli pirates, a.k.a. the Moors, right? They were Muslims. Yep. I'm not trying to to this day, when I look in the mirror, I have a big nose. That is the same profile, and that's why I have family to this day in countries in North Africa. I'm not going to deny that lineage. I do have family, and I know them. I've talked to them online, that live in countries in North Africa that have been going through some of these revolutions, Egypt and, the like. Same face, same race, they say in that region. The fact that I'm related to those people.
Can you imagine if you said that in this country?
It's totally politically incorrect. I'm a white guy in this country because I have blue eyes, but you can't deny genetically that I am related to North Africans. I mean, there's just no way to deny that. They raped and pillaged white people, right? And I'm not mad at them for that. I mean, it's over. It's gone and over with. But those people, what you're talking about, the Tripoli pirates that went into Sicily and other parts of southern Europe and took over, those people brought with them a complete different style of government, a complete different style of ownership of human beings. The idea that somehow we're so horrible as Europeans or non-Europeans, whatever, I don't know what you call me, as compared to anybody else is nonsense.
I'd call you
the United
American.
States, I just got one sentence. Let me just say this one sentence, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I totally am. I know it's your show. 2% of the transatlantic slave trade came to the United States. 40% went to Brazil. Why are we worse than Brazil?
Because we allow the liberals to say that we are.
Right.
Thank you. That's it. And I'm not anti-Muslim either. I was simply pointing out that, hey, Americans were enslaved during the time of the revolution as well. And and look, we're bad because we allow them to frame the argument and say we're bad, and they ignore everything that has been done, both by the founders as well as everything since then that's been done in order to try and right that wrong and that injustice, and ignore it and basically say they've been oppressed. Another thing is I stopped saying that I'm Portuguese American, or look, my family, I'm first generation actually born in the United States. My family came over from Portugal to Hawaii and
God bless you.
And thank you. Worked the pineapple and sugarcane plantations when King Kamehameha sent word over to Europe that he needed people to work those fields, and so my family were immigrants there. And my parents were even born in Hawaii before Hawaii was a state; it was a territory. And so I'm first generation born in the United States.
God bless you, man. That's awesome.
Well, thanks, brother. I call myself an American. I don't say I'm Portuguese American, or I'm American. And even on birth certificates of my kids, it was pretty funny. My wife was like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not checking Caucasian." Have you ever been to Caucasia? Where is that? Yeah.
I want to go to the fatherland.
I've never been to Caucasia. Never seen it on a map. So I put American.
Suntan. Nobody can.
I checked other, and I put American, and of course the lady came back and she goes, "So, like, are you like Portuguese American, or are you Italian American?" I said, "No, wasn't born in Italy. I wasn't born in Portugal. I was born in America. I'm an American. I don't need to hyphenate my name. Now, if I would have immigrated here, maybe I could hyphenate my name, and I'd feel more comfortable with that. But I'm an American, and I think those labels do nothing but separate us and creates that division with us as a people."
Totally.
I'm all for hyphenating what you are if it doesn't define you. Like, I'm Sicilian American, but that doesn't mean that it defines me. Like, I don't have any allegiance to Sicily as a country. In fact, Sicily, if you look up their history, tried to become a state in the Union. They actually petitioned the United States, and it was seriously considered. Nobody remembers that, but that's the truth.
Not only that, but if you say you're Sicilian, it kind of means you're a badass, and everybody knows that.
I'm Irish American.
Okay, well, I guess so.
I have allegiance to Guinness and Jameson, but that's about it.
And the Red Sox.
No, that's Red Sox Nation. So I'm Red Sox American too.
Go Tribe. Sorry,
Tony. We're up against our last break of the night, brother. I appreciate your call. It was a pleasure having you on. We're gonna get that picture out to you, okay?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on, guys, and let me spit all my stats at you. I know it's overwhelming.
Hey, no problem, Tony.
We're glad to have educated people come on the show and discuss with us.
And we hope you keep listening.
Yeah, please join us every week. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, guys. Have a nice night.
Hey, guys, it's Shaun from Sack Kids Radio. I want to talk to you a minute about our friends over at HomefrontHugs.com. They're an amazing organization of volunteers who take their time, effort, and money to take care of our troops overseas as they serve our great nation. HomefrontHugs.com. You can donate, write letters to troops, adopt a troop, you name it, you can do it. Help those wonderful folks who protect our freedoms. Go to HomefrontHugs.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Shaun and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the wingnut leaders throughout the world, to give our men and women of the armed forces a job, as well as all the anarchists, terrorists, and Occupy folks that give our men and women in uniform on the home front, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and first responders, job security here in the States as well. So thank all you wingnuts out there. This is Sackhead Clint saying have a good day.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. You know, we often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school boards, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Politigal Network, POLITIGAL Network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PolitigalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, Check out politigalnetwork.com or Twitter at politigalusa.
Hey guys, do you like our news briefs? Better yet, do you like the amazing voice that does our news briefs? Do you need some audio work done? Check out PlatinumVocalCords.com. Our friend Vanessa has years of broadcast experience. She's an absolute professional. She'll work with you, get the sound exactly how you'd want it. So go to PlatinumVocalCords.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you. Hey guys, it's Shaun from Sackheads Radio. I know I've said it before. Check out our friends at conservativeoutcry.net, but I really mean it. If you want interesting and exciting political commentary and analysis, that is the place to get it. Different, always spot on, always truthful, never pulling a punch. conservativeoutcry.net. Tell Rooster to get Bulldog back on and that Sackheads Radio sent you. And also, coming soon, the Sackheads Radio Forum on conservativeoutcry.net.
This is Sal from New York. Please listen to Sackheads Radio.
This guy's
Now back to Clint and Shaun on Sackheads Radio, bringing elegancy and quality.
With our good friend Sal from New York giving us love. We're gonna skip topics, but we have Bob on the show who says he has a quote from a KGB agent. So I'm interested to see what this is. Bob?
Hey guys, man, how you doing, man? Good to hear from you.
Good.
How you doing, Bob?
Pretty good. You guys were talking about the education. I got a chuckle out of that, and it reminded me of a quote that Yuri Bezmenov, who defected here, former KGB agent, said about KGB operations. He said it was big, huge, mostly 85% slow process of ideological subversion or psychological warfare, and he talked about infiltrating education. And he says, quote, in other words, Marxist-Leninist ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of American patriotism. Goes the result?
Yeah.
The result you can see. And this was back in 1984. They've had 27 more years to continue this thing.
Well, and as you see now, it still goes because, and we talk about this all the time. You have Che Guevara on T-shirts, Mao hats out there, people proud of that stuff. They don't question it. We talked about in one of our early podcasts, I think it was the 25 communist goals to infiltrate America and destroy America.
Yeah, it was the Communist Goals 1963, which was read into the congressional record in the House of Representatives in 1963, and they actually talked about attempting to basically do away with loyalty oaths, and there was actually a push in California to try and get state employees to not have to take loyalty oaths anymore. Talking about dominating the political parties, gain control of student newspapers, gain control of the schools, and as a quote, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, and put the party line in textbooks.
Well, teachers' associations and unions.
Yep, they talk all about discrediting the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats. Basically, all the things that they've done. Discredit the American Constitution, calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs. And I mean, you go down this list, and it's actually scary. There were 45 goals. And anybody can Google it who's listening that maybe hasn't seen them. Just Google Communist Goals 1963 congressional record, and it'll pop up.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. And they also said at some point, I think it was during the Vietnam War, I can't remember exactly who or when exactly, but somewhere in the 60s or 70s, they said, well, communists in America said, well, we really don't have to do too much. We got the Democrat Party working on our behalf.
I think that was it John Kerry that said that? I think that might have been, was it? I don't know. I could be a little off. I didn't research that, but I think it might have been John Kerry that said that.
It's
Bob,
interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. It's interesting you brought up that name. Now, here, I don't know if you hear the conspiracy theories, but this is the guy who came back from Vietnam, right? And said what he said in front of Congress, that U.S. troops were putting electrical wires to genitals, turning on the power, cutting off arms and limbs or whatever, burning down and razing villages into men or Genghis Khan, et cetera, et cetera. This article came out about 5 years, maybe 6-7 years ago, I guess, maybe, in the Wall Street Journal by a former intelligence officer, the highest-ranking intelligence officer ever to defect to America, behind the Warsaw Pact, and
right.
He was saying that during Vietnam they put out a great disinformation campaign saying, quote, the U.S. troops were cutting off limbs, razing villages in the manner of Genghis Khan, putting electrical wires taped to the generals, and turn on the power, et cetera, et cetera. Literally, word for word, almost verbatim, what John Kerry was spouting to the U.S. Congress. So it makes you wonder, okay, which is this guy? Is John Kerry a KGB operative, or is he just a useful idiot? It's got to be one or the other.
I'm going to go with idiot, but that's just me. And Bob, thanks for the call. We're going to move on. We have another guy on hold, but I'm going to go with useful idiot. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's an assault idiot.
He's an assault idiot.
Thanks for the call, Bob.
Thanks for the call, Bob. Now we have Ed from Detroit, and he wants to talk about the title of our show tonight. Ed, what's wrong with the title of our show, buddy?
Oh, nothing wrong. Everything's wrong with Piers Morgan, but nothing wrong with your title of your show and your subject line.
Whew, I was getting nervous.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
Well, a couple points and a few things bring up about Piers Morgan is maybe you might be able to clarify, but I had a friend of mine actually tell me that the school where his kids go, there's, I believe he told me 9 or 11 armed guards at the school where he sends his kids for someone who's so anti-gun and pro-England government over here with their gun control policies. And I found it kind of humorous. I saw a YouTube video when he brought on Jesse Ventura as the guest to talk about the gun control issue. And when Jesse Ventura got done speaking to him and debating the gun control, I'd say about 90% of his audience were cheering for Jesse Ventura. But, you know, he loves to bring up England and Australia, but really let's take a look at what's going on just south of our border in Mexico, where it's a gun control nation, and yet these drug cartels are just got the government bought and sold, and the murder rate and the crime over there is just out of control beyond proportion.
And that's an excellent point, Ed. And, you know, that's something that gets overlooked, and it hasn't been brought up in this argument often enough, in my opinion. You know, Mexico, I'm pretty sure, I don't know the law offhand, but I'm almost positive that the average person is not legally allowed to possess a weapon. But yet these cartels, because the government is so bought and paid for, these cartels just have carte blanche, and they walk around with automatic weapons.
That's why they're called cartels.
Oh, carte blanche.
Yes.
Good call. I didn't even realize that.
Not a problem.
They run these towns, and now, because it's gone unchecked for so long, and I remember the president there from Mexico coming over here and blaming us for the gun issues, while he had a press conference with our president didn't say jack about it. But now it has more and more started to cross the border, and American citizens are being killed, and they're going after the people that are, you know, smuggling their drugs that aren't paying them or whatever. But as a result of their quote-unquote gun control, and they should be a safe nation, guns aren't supposed to be allowed, they have a ridiculously high, you know, Juarez is like a demilitarized zone, and nothing is said about that because we don't want to insult our neighbors to the south. But the reality is there. It's a gun-controlled nation. It's one of the most violent nations, from what I understand, of modern countries. Their murder rate is, I believe, way higher than ours. And nobody wants to address the fact that, hey, they have total gun control. Are we going to do it better than they are? Because, really, you know, this is the same government that's supposed to secure the border and can't, supposed to control drugs. They can't, but we're going to put gun control into their hands. I don't necessarily see how that's going to work out. And as far as Piers Morgan's kids going to a school with armed guards, yeah, I would bet my left hand that they probably do, because it's good enough for him because he thinks he's an elitist and he'll be protected by the left, but it's not good enough for the average person who believes that they have a reason to protect themselves either against tyranny or they just want to have one because they're legally allowed to, it's not good enough for them. We're not smart enough in his opinion. He's smart enough, but we're not smart enough. That's what it comes down to.
And the right to bear arms in Mexico it's restricted. They say that weapons may be kept in home for security and legitimate defense of its dwellers. That's Title II, Chapter 2, Article 15 of their Federal Law of Firearms and Explosives. And that possession imposes a duty to manifest them. Basically, they have to be registered, and then to carry it outside of the home, a license is required, unless you're a member of the armed forces or a law enforcement institution. However, they limit it. You cannot have a semi-automatic handgun with a caliber greater than a .380, but you can't have a .38 Super or a .38 Commander, or I believe a 9mm. But you also cannot have a revolver greater than a .38 Special, but a .357 Magnum, which is obviously a little bit smaller in diameter. You cannot have that. So that's essentially their firearm laws. They're very restrictive, but they have these cartels are running around with fully automatic weapons and everything that their laws don't say. I point to China, and we talked to China about China a few shows back, where we say, look, guns are absolutely outlawed in China for private citizens, yet they're having a major run on slashings at schools, where they're having these major attacks at schools where these attackers are using edged weapons. So it's not the weapon, it's the person.
Well, that was. I was just going to touch on a little bit, like with Mexico. What we have here in the U.S. when people think of organized crime, let's say you talk about the Italian mafia in New York, or some of the big drug gangs, doesn't even come close to what goes on in Mexico. There was a town, I forget the name, but it was near the border of the Rio Grande in Texas there. And anyway, there was a mayor of this town, got some law enforcement together in Mexico, and they arrested one of these head drug ring leaders with his crew, and I believe it was like a week later was killed.
Yeah.
And shot to death right out in public. I mean, public officials in Mexico, if they're not bought and sold by the drug cartels, they're just flat out killed. And when they go anywhere, a lot of these government officials in Mexico, even like chiefs of police, they have to have caravans of
to protect them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
for executive protection.
It's crazy down there.
And I appreciate the call, Ed. We're gonna, because we have to wrap up the show. But thanks for the call. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mayors, and there was one female mayor specifically who led this big charge against the cartels in her town. And she was, I believe, her husband was kidnapped and murdered, and she was kidnapped at one point. And then she got free, and she took over as her mayoral duties again, and she ended up getting killed because she kept going after the drug cartel. There was also a whole police department that was wiped out by the cartels on a border town, and the one female officer that was left, the only one that would show up to work after a while, got shot like 3 different times, and they ended up finding her murdered. And that's in a state that has fairly strict gun control.
So why doesn't the Mexican military declare war and just freaking bomb those compounds?
Because they're all bought.
Oh, yeah, never mind.
The government's all bought.
Yeah. No, you're right. I forget I asked. I'm sorry.
So, it's funny because when the left accuses us of like the 1% and they run everything, they control everything.
I just like how Mexico comes over and starts pointing fingers at us.
I know. It's seriously like the guy with the terrible lawn. And talking about the guy with the really nice lawn that hasn't trimmed his weeds for a few days.
And that violence has spread over the U.S. borders.
Yeah.
So, hey, is that not an act of war? Is that not would a military?
You have to prove by virtue that the cartels work directly for the government, or the government works directly.
Well,
for
hang
the
on
cartels.
a second. If the government is not doing anything about it, would we be in defense of our borders, since that violence has spilled over, by taking direct action?
No, and I'll tell you why.
Question. Go.
Because it's mean.
Oh.
And that's not right.
Okay.
We're not supposed to be mean. As we talked about with the schools, everything, it's just a big love fest. If everyone would just love each other, we'd be fine.
How's your assault Gatorade?
My assault Gatorade is going down.
We should outlaw those because that's mean sounding.
Oh man! So
we didn't even get to the knucklehead who was trying to repeal the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution.
Well, let's talk about it real quick. We have 10 minutes left, and that's a big one because I think we called this.
We did call this
just before the last election.
Yep.
I believe we said if he was elected, watch some knucklehead will try to get him for a third. We should get Socko to figure out what show that was so we can play that clip next week.
And if he and if somebody wasn't gonna, we said, hey, you know what? A national emergency such as a time of crisis, such as, hey, I don't know, like a financial collapse.
Yeah.
He tried to invoke martial law, suspend the Constitution, and now he's in power for a long time. Also, another scary thought. But the repeal of the 22nd Amendment was actually proposed in Congress. The congressman was
Representative Serrano, from the Bronx, I believe.
Really nice conservative area. That's weird. It's probably not going to get to be passed. However, I think it's in the Judicial Committee right now, and he's trying to repeal the 22nd Amendment outright. Which, for those of you that may or may not know, that would mean that it would remove term limits for the President of the United States. Which means that if passed, President Obama could run for a third term, fourth term, and so forth. What I think is funny is that this is being proposed while their guy's in office.
Weird, right?
Could you imagine if this was proposed while Bush is in office? Oh, they just want a dictatorship and all this stuff. But because of Obama,
the powerful wants to stay in power, and God forbid, and blah 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 blah. And this is just.
Anyways, so he's trying to repeal it. I believe it's in the Judiciary Committee. It's. Do you have the stats on it?
I don't have it up in front of me. I
Perfect.
was just reading it the other day. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Google it and it'll pop right up there. But the reason it's not going to pass is they don't have the votes in Congress to get it. Now, here's why the midterm elections all of a sudden become very important.
And I don't know what the breakdown of the Judiciary Committee is. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it through that and push it out.
It doesn't matter. Boehner's not going to let it get to a vote on the floor. So it's not going anywhere.
But it would scare me even if it went through the Judiciary. That would still scare me.
It would. But, it would. I don't want anybody. Look, FDR should have taught us something, folks. There's a reason that amendment's in place.
Yeah, it's there for a damn good cause. If this guy is so good, he shouldn't need three, right? If he's going to fix everything and everything's going to be fine, why does he need three? Why can't he do it in two?
Hey, you know what? It was so screwed up. Bush screwed it up so much, so bad, that he needs another 4 years to really get us on the right track.
By the way, I just want to point out, because you are so hard against repealing the 22nd and not wanting the president to run for a third, there's a good chance you're a racist.
I don't want any president to run for a third term. Look.
No, that doesn't matter. The argument's going to be right now.
Right.
If you are against this, you're probably racist.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with his policies, once again.
No, absolutely
not. It has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the Constitution, it being in place for a reason.
Well, no, there wasn't term limits.
Right.
So there was not term limits.
But we added them for a reason. Because we as a nation recognize.
Because somebody abused.
Right.
Because somebody abused it.
Right.
Look, I have a problem with somebody that wants to stay in power like that.
Yeah.
Because why? Look, I understand and I respect people that want to serve for the sake of serving. Military personnel, law enforcement personnel, fire personnel, people that want to serve in order to help their community, help their country, help their state, whatever it is, for the purpose of serving. It's a calling or whatnot. Not for the purpose of power. I have a problem with any elected official that wants to stay in office for sake of power. I have a problem with any police officer that wants to become a police officer because he or she wants that power. I have a problem with that. And I go back to George Washington because he was my favorite president. Lincoln would be my second. George Washington he could have been king, and he refused. He could have been another Caesar, and he refused. He didn't seize Congress. He had the opportunity to seize Congress, to seize Congress, both when he marched through Philadelphia on his way to Yorktown and even after the war, and he didn't do it.
Wait, where?
What?
Yorktown.
Remember Yorktown.
Remember Yorktown.
Pierce. And he didn't. And then he ran for president, not because he wanted to. He wanted to retire at Mount Vernon and be a farmer. That's what he wanted to do. His writings bear that out. And he was asked to serve as president, and he did so because he was asked. And he even said, "Have I not done enough for my country?" But he served. And same with the second term, and then he voluntarily gave it. He could have gone a third term, and he could have served for the rest of his life.
Right.
But he didn't. He gave it up, and he stepped down because he understood the dangers of a tyrannical government. So I have a major issue with somebody that wants to stay in power. Or I have a problem with people that want to keep the same person or the same people in power.
Well, and this brings us full circle to the beginning with the interview with Piers Morgan and Ben Shapiro. Shapiro said, it may not be in my lifetime, it could be 50 and 100 years, but the possibility of a tyrannical government is always there. If history's taught us nothing, it has shown us that it keeps happening over and over. Even now, they're tyrannical.
Human nature does not transcend time. Human nature transcends time.
Right.
It doesn't change based upon new science, technology, whatever.
And I truly think, given the opportunity, this guy would take it. And I really think that. You look at what he's done, some of the power grabs he's done, the executive orders. You talk about gun control. He's talking about using executive orders for that. He sidesteps our process on a regular basis. Now this coin that's coming out, the $1 trillion coin, and I know I saw a picture. It was his picture on it. Without sounding like an uber conspiracy theorist, it's possible.
You just said Uber.
I did, because I'm not at all German. I don't even know if that's a German word. I just made all that up. And it's there. I mean, there are reasons for people to be suspicious. You look at, extending the executive order that he signed that extend all the resources of the country if he declared martial law or a major state of emergency. You look
his
at
new the FEMA Corps, his new civilian
the FEMA Corps
force or whatever you want to call it.
What they're trying to do right now. Socialized healthcare, which is socialized healthcare. We talked about it before. He doesn't like to call himself a socialist because that's a naughty word. So he just says progressive. I say constitutional terrorist. But
I'm surprised that it hasn't come up to tax firearm ownership.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Because, hey, they have the power to tax, right? Supreme Court just ruled it.
Oh, yeah.
Just ruled that they can, not that they just ruled that they have the power to tax.
Thanks.
But really, like I'm the first person that probably thought of that?
Yes.
I'm not that smart.
Do you realize the hundreds of lawmakers in Washington that listen to this show?
Actually, we do have some.
We do actually have some, which is kind of cool.
But no, think about it. The Supreme Court has ruled that that the individual mandate, the individual mandate could be put into effect because the penalty isn't a penalty; it's a tax.
Right.
So if you own a firearm, why can they not do the same thing, utilize that same reasoning and say, hey, if you own a gun, you can own a gun. You have the choice to own a gun, but if you do, you're going to have to pay a tax on that weapon every year you own that weapon. It's not a penalty, it's a tax, and we have the right to tax. Mm-hmm. And not only do you have a tax on each weapon you own, because that way they can control the amount of guns you have, but now they can tax you on the amount of ammunition per round.
Well, and you know what? What's next? You pay a tax based on the caloric intake in your food?
Well, think about it. That would actually be a clever backdoor way to gun ownership.
Yes.
And for them to know and regulate exactly how much, not only guns you have, but how much ammunition for each type of weapon you have.
Right, because we need to know it for taxation purposes.
Yep, because you now have to account for all of that to the IRS for taxation purposes.
And I'm not kidding, but what is the next step? The caloric intake. The amount of your tax will be based on the amount of calories you buy.
You know what?
You can go anywhere with that.
I always bring it back to this argument. Hey, okay, then how's about this? If you choose to exercise your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, you can do that, but we're going to tax you for every hour you don't tell us what really happened.
And it's going to be, I don't know, $1 trillion an hour.
Use this coin.
Yeah, exactly. You can put
right, but where's the stop? If you're gonna tax one right, or you're gonna tax somebody because they choose not to buy something or whatever, where does it stop? It's that whole, And, hey, just because your guy's doing it now, guess what, folks? They're going to get a turn, too.
Yeah, it's going to change eventually. It may not be this time, may not be. It's not going to last forever unless, of course, the 20 seconds repeal. Or was declared martial law. Hey, it's been a great show.
It's been a great show.
For all of our callers, it was a good time. Thank you, as always, to Sacco, who busted his ass on the phones. He's killing a new website. It's going to be up this week, hopefully. He's been working his tail off for us.
My aircraft is on the tarmac. It's getting geared up and ready to go.
It is getting geared up.
It's been a great show. It's been a pleasure seeing you this week.
I'll see you next Friday night, same time.
You got it.
10:30 Pacific. Check us out, sackheadsradio.com. See the awesome new website that Sacco's putting up. He's also putting out the iPhone app. He is making this show actually work on the electronic side because we don't know what the hell we're doing. Follow us on Twitter.
We have electronics?
Follow us on Twitter at Sackheads. You should call us 347-205-9399. If you want to email us, fan mail at sackheadsradio.com. Thank you very much, folks. We will see you next Friday night at the exact same time.
Well, no, it'd actually be 2 hours earlier because the exact same time now we'd be in a show.
Well, no, I understand. It actually won't be the exact same time.
Right.
Listen, we're having an argument here. No, but it's going to be a week from now, right?
No, well, 2 hours short of.
Right. No, I get you. You're right. No, 22 hours. No, not 22 hours. It doesn't matter.